So we have this guide, and I want to share with you just a few of them. First, from the Bible. A classical example we can cite is the story of David. Quite an interesting story in the Bible. That David was a shepherd boy, an insignificant boy. But what happened to him? God lifted him up, and then he became king. So from shepherd boy to king. Though your beginning was small, yet your latter end would increase abundantly. We can also reflect upon the story of Jabez, which is one of the shortest stories in the Bible. But it is a reflection of what God can do in our individual lives. Jabez, when the mother gave birth to him, she gave him the name Jabez. And the meaning of Jabez in Hebrew is sorrow or distress or anguish. As a matter of fact, the mother said, it was out of sorrow, it was out of pain that I gave birth to you. So she gave him the name Jabez. But the Bible says that one day this young man knelt down and prayed a powerful prayer and said, "Oh God, change my situation in life, change my destiny. Oh Lord, bless me." And the Bible says God heard his anguish, his prayer, and then God had to change his destiny, and God blessed him. And Jabez, someone who was unknown in his family, someone who was least regarded in his family, became honorable. In other words, Jabez moved from a position of dishonor to a position of honor. Why? Because he prayed. Though your beginning was small, yet your latter end would increase abundantly. There are quite a number of interesting stories of people's lives that reflect that passage, that text, that though your beginning was small, yet your latter end would increase abundantly. Apart from the Bible, if we look at our contemporary world, our world history, there are quite a number of people that also started as nobodies, and God lifted them up into apogee levels. And one of those guys whose stories has really amazed me is the former Brazilian president, Lucio Lula da Silva. Now, he started as a shoeshine boy, shoeshine boy in the streets of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Can you imagine this? He rose up to become president of that country. Isn't it amazing? From shoeshine boy into the presidency. From shoeshine boy, he became president. Though your beginning was small, yet your latter end would increase abundantly. There are so many of them. We can talk of the story, the life of our former Prime Minister, Dr. Kofi Abrefa-Busia. A few years ago, we visited his hometown to conduct evangelism. And then we met this old man, and then he started telling us how it all started. Buzia's family, the school he attended. A very interesting story about Buzia. Now, in those days, that village was not connected to the national electricity grid. They didn't have electricity. In those days, they didn't have motorable roads. In those days, they didn't have potable drinking water. But that village was able to produce Ghana's second prime minister. Interestingly, Dr. Kofi Abrefa-Busia became the first professor in Africa. And the whites were fascinated about his academic acumen to the extent that they were able to develop an acrostic from each of the letters of his name. Busia, B-U-S-I-A, Busia. The B stands for best, U stands for university, S stands for scholar, I stands for I stands for in, and A stands for Africa, the best university scholar in Africa. But the question is, how did he start? Where did he come from? He came from a remote community, a remote village in the Brong-Ahafo region. But he rose to the top to become Ghana's second prime minister. Though your beginning was small, yet your latter end will increase abundantly. There are so many of them, so many interesting stories of people whose whose stories are amazing in the sense that in the sense that they started as nobodies, people with no hope, people with no future, but God had to lift them up. And that is exactly what He's going to do in your life. God is going to lift you up into higher levels. Just believe in Him, begin to trust Him, begin to think about Him as as your source, as your everything, and He will lift you up into apogee levels. Now let me also share with you a few principles and a few ideas that can help you start from the bottom of your class or start from the bottom of your career and then get to the top of your career, get to the top of whatever you are doing. The first is lay a solid foundation. Lay a very solid foundation. Lay a very solid foundation. And what do I mean by this? You know, I was trained as a land economist, and we look at buildings predominantly. We are concerned about the value of buildings, and we are concerned about construction, about buildings and all that. Now, in every building, you find two parts. The first part is the part you see with your eyes. It is called the superstructure. You see the building, you see it with your eyes. It is called the superstructure. Now, there is one part of the building you don't see. It is buried beneath the earth, the soil, and it is called the foundation or the substructure. Interestingly,